Hello, chess friends, and welcome to Jozarov's chess channel, and welcome to a very special tournament that's going on now on the TCEC official website. This tournament is really between the top engines that are performing now these days. In the tournament, in the lead are the Lc0, of course, the Stockfish 13 version, but also this new and improved Komodo Dragon version. Lc0 is in the lead, which is really incredible. Lc0 has half of the point more than Stockfish 13. This is now almost a classical time format because these engines have 1 hour on the clock while playing these chess games. I think this could be maybe Lc0's tournament because recently we have seen this pure domination by Stockfish 13. Now Lc0 is in the lead, we'll see now, but recently we haven't seen that Lc0 takes the lead in the tournament. Stockfish was always on the first place from the beginning and then ended the tournament also as the winner. So let's check out now one incredible gameplay by Lc0 here with the black pieces against another top engine Winter. It was, I think, a very instructive chess game, and although the games are pre-arranged to one particular moment, I think these are decent openings that they're playing, and that's actually what I've searched a little bit for, because recently we have seen this dubious openings, and then Stockfish brutalizes this tiny little inaccuracy in the opening stage immediately and then wins games very effectively. Now we're having, I think, more equalish opening lines, which is, I think, better for us because these lines are more often played also in human level, so that's why we can use them in order to improve our strategies and improve our skills, in particular openings and opening lines. So let's check out now the game between Winter and Lc0. As usual, we're starting the game with this Mortal Kombat sound, round 1 and fight. So here Winter opened with the move e4, d6 played by Lc0, the Pirc defense. So far, of course, the Pirc defense is not maybe the best of choices and the most popular of choices of blacks, but still you see Lc0 will play this in opening line. Knight to f6, knight to c3, g6, we have knight to e2, bishop to g7, and now the fianchetto variation of white with the move g3, castling, bishop to g2, and now knight to d7. Here castling, so far the game was prearranged, and c5 was also still prearranged. So the game is about equal, so not that after the move c5 or something white has a pure domination. This is, I think, a decent open line. It has been played many times in chess history. I see also, for instance, here a game between Jan Nepomniachtchi against Alexander Grishuk, so it's played in top grandmaster level. So here h3, the idea is clear about this h3 move because we want to develop our dark square bishop on a natural square on e3, so that's why this h3 comes with the idea to prevent this move knight to g4. Here rook to b8. First of all, what this move does is, of course, supporting a potential b5 move, but also support the bishop on b7, because there are always some tensions. If you play this b5 or b6 too early, then you could get attacked with the discovered attack by the long diagonal against the rook, so that's why rook to b8 a normal idea. So bishop to e3 and now b6. So this move rook to b8, the game was prearranged. Now the first move that the engines had to calculate for themselves was the move bishop to e3, and this is an equal game. So as I said, it wasn't a dubious opening that was prearranged for black or for white. Let's see now what happened. It was, I think, a great position and great tactical game here by Lc0. So after bishop to e3, we have now the move b6, and I've watched now many games by top engines in this prearranged line, and many of these engines play the move b5, and it seems like a great idea. I would play the b5 move for sure, but actually this is not good. This is not such a good idea because you get e5 immediately, and the problem is now after e5, if you try, for instance, d takes e5, then we can take out d takes c5, and this pawn is very annoying. It's supported by these two bishops. It can be maneuvered here to c6, knight to d5 will happen, queen to d2, rook to d1, maybe even try some after b4 some other opportunities with this knight. So this pass pawn that white can create is, I think, simply that war is now black in the continuation of the game. So that's why after move bishop to e3, Lc0 plays the move b6, and that's actually a great move because it fixes simply the pawn structure on the queen side. You see now, as I said, I would for sure play the move b5, and I would say to myself, Joe, you played such a great opening, you get out of the opening so easily, but actually it would be a mistake, so I would be crushed probably immediately in the game. So after move b6, here queen to c1 by this engine Winter, trying to, of course, play the move rook to d1, getting the rook where the queen is, trying some discovered attack against the queen. C takes d4, knight to d4, bishop to b7, attacking now the e4 pawn. This e4 is so far protected, but there is always idea of blacks, which black can use, is sometimes even to play something like rook to c8. Just pay good attention. Queen to c7, of course, after a6, we're not allowing some knight to b5. Then maybe queen to b8 and then queen to a8. You'll see many times in these types of structures that black will even maneuver the queen to a8 just in order to keep the pressure against the e4. It's a long-term plan. This will be not played in this game, but I think sometimes you can, when you don't know sometimes where to attack, I think you can use this queen maneuver to a8 in order to attack the pawn on e4. It has been played many times. I think it's a nice strategy that you can do. So rook to d1 comes now a6, preventing some knight to b5. We want to get the queen somewhere here on c7. When the queen has moved to c7, then of course we have finished our stage of the opening. It's of course the rook connection I've mentioned many times. It's simply the third stage of the opening. First we should develop minor pieces, secure the king by castling, and now simply maneuver the queen from the first or 8th rank from black's perspective. So here a4, blocking a little bit also black's potential progress with the move b5. Here e6, you see now Lc0 plays on this restriction idea with these pawns, with these 4 pawns, e6, d6, b6 and a6. We have restricted basically every square now on the other side of the board, so no piece activity for white there. It's a very nice pragmatic positional idea, but of course you have also several weaknesses. What we can notice, a weak pawn in this position is also the weak pawn on the d6, but also the weak pawn on b6. If you play knight to b3 in order to attack now this pawn, queen to c7 could happen. Queen to e7 is also perfectly fine. We can defend this pawn, and if you try to double up here, for instance, queen to c7, maybe something like here queen to d2, then knight to e5 is also a very nice idea, because we're threatening also here the move knight to c4, queen takes d6, queen takes d6, rook takes d6, and then knight to c4 would be a very nice opportunity. So you see, it's not so easy sometimes to attack the position here in the game. After the move e6, Winter makes a huge positional blunder. Winter plays the move b4, and what we can notice now, okay, white has here a little bit of space advantage on the queen side, but we have now the parallel setup of pawns here. What I mean about this parallel setup, we have now a 2 versus 2 situation on the queen side, and actually white didn't gain anything with this move. So whenever white pushes the pawn on b5, I've explained also this strategy in one of my basics in chess series videos. If you have followed my basics in chess series videos, I've explained this parallel setup as a defensive strategy. Sometimes you see white has of course the space advantage, can push the pawn on b5, but will simply pass through with a5. If a5, then we play b5. So I don't think that with the move b4 white has gained so much here, so that's why it wasn't the best of moves. A simple idea would be simply to continue with the move knight from d to e2, then queen to c7 could happen, when then again we're attacking, and now black would be forced to play the move knight to e8. Knight to e8 protects of course this pawn, but of course we have lost now also the rook connection, so it's now a simple attack against the weak pawn. As I said, in this restriction idea, it's a playable idea, but you leave also some weaknesses, d6, b6. So you see now you have lost a little bit the rook connection. Now maybe white can use this moment in order maybe to try attack the position here on the king side with f4 and similar ideas. So this a pawn is holding simply the position of a potential b5 pawn breakthrough. So b4, huge blunder, a positional blunder. It's of course not maybe punishable in human chess level. I'm not sure who wins when maybe Magnus Carlsen plays, I don't know, against Fabiano Caruana in this position, similar positions. But as I said, in this top engine level, this tiny little inaccuracies got punished immediately here. Lc0 plays simply rook to c8, attacks the weak knight, and you see now the rook gets on a natural square just in order to defend the knight. Not the best of positions here for white. Here knight to e5, we have bishop to g5, queen to d7, getting out of the pin, and now b5, and you see now first knight is c4, and we're passing through with the move a5. So nothing gained here, I think, for white with this space advantage. Nothing you got here. You didn't create any weaknesses, you didn't create any open files or any open diagonals. I'm not sure about these ideas about play by Winter. So bishop to h4, trying to maybe f4, g4, g5, trying to get some kind of attack, but Lila counterattacks this idea with great move h5, wants to play knight to h7, and then also play sometimes the g5 move, because the bishop is a little bit endangered here. f4 played by Winter, we have knight to h7, king to h1, and now bishop takes d4. The knight here is off the board. It's a risky idea. but it's actually the best move because we can notice that the bishop on h4 is still endangered. We can notice that still this pawn on e4 is very, very vulnerable to black's attack. So after move bishop to d4, of course, after rook to d4, we can now play move f6. And when you give up the bishop pair like this, when you give up maybe the dark square bishop for a knight, you should then secure a very nice and compact position on that square. So it means we have given up the dark square bishop. Now it's time to put pawns on that squares, on dark squares, just in order to protect our position on now this vulnerable square. So here, rook to d3, queen to g7, with of course the idea to play the move g5. So that's why here g4 had to be played by Winter in order to liberate the new diagonal for the bishop. We have h takes g5, h takes g5, and now g5, bishop to g3. If you play now bishop takes f takes g5, then we can play knight to g5, and even if you take bishop takes g5, we can even take with the queen or with the pawn. That's not the point. Let's see now, maybe queen to g5, although this move is not the best engine move, but let's see for these purposes in order to show you how you can create some weaknesses. After queen to g5, queen to g5, f takes g5, you see now this pawn, as I said in the beginning, is simply a long-term weakness. This pawn will get attacked further with the knight, maybe with also some rook activities, rook to f4. So you see you have many pawns on light square, and you have a light square bishop. This is this so-called relation between bishops and pawns. I've mentioned many times in videos. When you have a light square bishop, then you want to have, of course, your pawns on dark square. So that's why I think this is a bad position here for black. It's not playable. So here, as I said, after move g5, bishop to g3 was played. Now we have g takes f4, bishop to f4, knight to g5. Again, a similar position appears here. If you take, we saw the positional problems in this scenario. We have rook to g1, rook to f7, queen to d1, and now rook to d7. Also queen to h6 would be an opportunity to simply build a queen and rook battery on the h file. But okay, rook to d7 protects, of course, also here this weak d6 pawn. If you take, for instance, bishop takes d6, then we can, I think, immediately take knight takes d6. The problem is now after rook takes d6, rook takes d6, and now after queen to d6, here I think the knight is a little bit hanging. We can play queen to c7 just in order to keep our pressure here on the c file. So I think this could be very annoying again to play. Again, this pawn on e4 is a long-term weakness, and I don't think didn't gain anything, although you're up a pawn. But this backward pawn on c2, the knight on c3, is simply a little bit loose on the board. So here after the move, rook to d7, rook to g3 was played. Now knight to e5, fixing the position on dark squares. Again, if you take, it's not a problem. We can simply take with the d pawn. The queen gets attacked by the rook activity on the d file, but still I'm pointing again simply out. This e4 is something that bothers, I think, white for the whole game. It's an isolated pawn which is simply defended by its own bishop. The bishop is blocked out. It's not a great position. So here bishop to e3, attacking now the weak b6 pawn, and now comes really the critical moment of the game. Here Lila-c0 played the move queen to h6, sacrifice now the pawn on b6. This pawn on b6 is not so important because now Lila-c0 has the opportunity to build this very powerful rook and queen battery in the game. King to f1, getting out of the range of the queen. Now bishop takes e4, a great sacrifice. You saw this pawn was a long-term weakness. Now finally Lila took it with some great tactics. Knight to e4, we have knight to e4, and now rook to h3 had to be played, because if you play bishop to e4, then you get queen to f4, the check, and it's basically game over. You can maybe go with your king in order to protect your rook, but now you get simply queen takes e4, and it's, I think, a bad game here for white. You don't have so many good squares. King to f1, also rook to c2 will happen. You're vulnerable to some attacks on the second rank, so it's game over simply here for white. So after move rook to h3, Lila-c0 played queen to d2. Now after queen to d2, a great counterattack, knight to d2, and we can now grab the rook for the exchange. Rook takes h7, and now the rook is much better. We have now a winning endgame here for white, for black, pardon me. Rook to b1, attacking the king. King to f2, knight takes g4. You see we have three connected pawns. We have rook for a bishop. It's simply winning here for Lila-c0. So king to e2, we have f5, cementing the bishop, cementing the knight. Bishop to c7, bishop takes d6, knight to e4, attacking, but now knight to c5. You see we're trying to get this pawn here on a4, but then also the pawn on b5. We have now a5, but now finally we can take bishop to c7. Now again, rook to b1, attacking the bishop, king to f2, and now the king has to play knight to e4, attacking. We have now even e5. These two pawns are simply too much to handle. They're marching here, rook to b2, and now knight to g5. Very nice move, because if you take, then you get the fork on f3. We have bishop to g2, preventing this idea, but now Lila c0 can push this pawn further. We have a6, rook to a2, getting behind this pawn, never allow to advance the pawn here anymore. King to h5, a7. We have king to g4. Now king to f1, f4. We have king to e1, f3, simply proceeding our attack. Nothing can happen here. Bishop to f1, and now you see how the pawns are marching. We have here e3, we have bishop to b5, now a new check, and now we can simply take bishop to d4, rook to a3. Here the knight comes into the game. Very, very easy endgame here to play. We have e2, we have bishop takes e2, king takes e2, and in this position winter resigns. So whatever you do, if you take, of course you lose simply the game. We'll simply continue now with the whole rook up. If you take out, of course, the rook, then we'll simply promote to f1 and it would be game over. So great game by Lila c0. You see, with the black pieces, Lila c0 won the game, is now in the lead of this very prestigious TCEC tournament. We'll see what will happen now. I really hope that Lila c0 can perform much better than recently. We need really a tough opponent for Stockfish 13, because it was really a pure domination for Stockfish. Now I hope we'll have a more equal battle between these two top engines. Also, the Komodo Dragon is performing very well. I'm just looking forward to see more of this attacking princess. You see how Lila c0 can even play with the black pieces. It doesn't matter in this top engine level. If they're playing this normal healthy openings, I think they have chances even with black, but also with white pieces, of course. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. Really nice position, again, brilliantly by Lila c0. If you want to see more attacking chess like this, or more positional games like this, check out my commented chess games played by computer series. Here's also the link. And if you like maybe some more human games, you can also check out my best chess games of all time series with some immortal attacks from chess history. Here's also the link. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.